Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Um, welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay Rosen. I'm a volunteer with Nefesh B'Nefesh. Excuse me. I myself made Aliyah with them over 15 years ago. And here at Cafe Oleh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here to succeed, whether that's reading your electric bills or keeping up with the news or striking up an everyday conversation or grocery shopping, whatever it is that you may not feel that Ulpan is helping you with, or wherever else you're learning Hebrew, or perhaps you're not learning Hebrew. But the point is, instead of waiting to catch up with regards to grammar and vocabulary and whatever, we really focus on practical Hebrew here. So much so we want you to be able to use at the very least a little bit of what we teach you and be able to go out right after class to use it. Our classes are meant to be user forward. Even though this is on Zoom, even though most people on this call are at a more introductory level. So by user forward, I mean that the topics that we discuss are proposed by you. We want to hear what you as future and current and past Olim need to know how to express in Hebrew and how to express here in Israel. So we're always up for new topics. If you have a topic in mind, please be in touch with Nefesh B'Nefesh and we'll be glad to put in consideration. Also remember that this and all previous sessions of Cafe Oleh are available on YouTube for free. All you have to do is go to Nefesh B'Nefesh on youtube.com, just type in Nefesh B'Nefesh, even type in Cafe Oleh. And you'll see all our previous sessions. And if you can't make future sessions, or you just want to know when this one is going to go live so you can review it, you can go back over the vocabulary list I'm about to share. You can just click subscribe on the Nefesh B'Nefesh YouTube channel. And every time there's a new class that's uploaded for the week, you'll be able to see it there. Right. One last bit of housekeeping. As you know, for future lessons, you need to sign up for each week, but you'll get that in the weekly email from Nefesh B'Nefesh. And lastly, if you have questions as I'm going through this lesson, please write it in the Q&A section. You'll see that in the menu bar here on Zoom. Click Q&A and type in your question, and I'll get to as many of them as possible. If you have questions, comments about anything else, an idea for an upcoming topic, you don't like the shirt I'm wearing, whatever it may be, please write that in the chat button, not in the Q&A. There's a lot of you, there's only one of me, and I need to teach as well as facilitate, so thank you in advance. Right, we are going to get started with today's lesson, which was, again, a request from you to talk about travel and tourism, and what an auspicious day to do it on the 1st of November 2021. This is the first day in over a year and a half that Israel has opened its borders to international tourists, granted who are fully vaccinated or recovered, with a lot of caveats, but the point is that the borders are open. The tourism industry, which comprises quite a bit of this country's GDP, is restarted. It's still going to take some time for it to get revitalized. And we were asked to go over travel and tourism. Now, there aren't so many words that you can't look up directly and find the meaning of. And certainly if you're going abroad, you'll always use English, right? And within Israel, again, a lot, even with people's various levels of English, a lot of the words are pretty basic, or they're able to be quickly looked up. As always, I'm not a human dictionary, right? I'm here to provide more context to the Hebrew you may not be able to understand on your own. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over some words that aren't quite clear at first. Some of this is going to be a review. We've gone over this several months ago, but review is great, especially when you're learning things. So with that, let me get started by sharing my screen with today's vocab list. Sorry, just one second. There it is. Okay, get back to Zoom. 1 minute. There you are. Zoom, Spotify, not Spotify, here. Okay. So today we are talking about travel and tourism. And first we're going to start with some verbs, and I gave you all some practice sentences, sample sentences rather. As always, the Hebrew will be in the middle of the spreadsheet. The transliteration for American English audiences, but everyone can follow along, is on the right. The English is on the left, but there's more. Again, these vocab lists are not meant to be a dictionary. I am not a human dictionary. I love reading dictionaries. I love reading all reference books. This is not meant for that. So those of you who ask for the vocab sheet, you'll be able to see this on the YouTube recording. You're also welcome to take a screenshot. You're welcome to old school pen and paper, write these out. But there's more to it than just what it says here in English, for example. And that's where you're going to need to listen to me and explain some of these words, because they don't just mean what they say here in English, at least. Right, let's get started. Row 2. Row 2, we're going to start with verbs. The first one is lalechet. All of these verbs that I give you, just like in most, not all dictionaries, but many, is going to be in the infinitive form. The infinitive means it's not reduced, it's not conjugated for time or gender or person. It simply is to do something. In this case, to go, right? Lalechet means to go. Lalechet, though, means to go, as you see here on the left-hand side, a short distance, right? You would only go a short distance when you use the verb lalechet. So if someone is saying to you, I'm going to the store, right? Here's our simple sentence. Ani olech lamakolet, right? That indicates that the makolet is nearby, and it's a short distance from where they are starting off before they start going. Okay, now you'll see here in row 3, I did not say the sentence in its entirety. The entirety of the sentence is Ani olech baregel lamakolet, or Ani olech baregel lamakolet, depending on how you say the letter resh, right? Lalechet means to go a short distance. Lalechet baregel means to go on foot, or simply to walk. Okay, lalechet baregel, regel is a foot or a leg, more specifically. So to go on foot, you could translate it for yourself as that, right? Lalechet baregel, to walk or to go on foot. Here I conjugated it first person, this case first person masculine, ani holech, at holechet, so forth. I'm not going to conjugate all the verbs here. You can look those up in conjugation tables. The point, though, is the sentence is demonstrating how we use this verb lalechet, which means a short distance. Ani holech baregel lamakolet. It's not just I'm going to the grocery store. And a grocery store, as we've talked about many weeks ago, indicates a smaller store, a more neighborhood-friendly store, not a big supermarket that you would need a car to get to. Simply picking up a few things, right? Ani holech lamakolet, ani holech baregel lamakolet. Okay, I'm going by foot. I'm going on foot. I'm walking to the grocery store. This is how you would say it in Hebrew. You can simply also just say ani holech lamakolet. I'm going to the store, the grocery store, right? You don't have to indicate, unless it's important in the context of your speaking, that I'm walking or I'm going on foot. But if it is, it further demonstrates that we're talking about a short distance. That is in contrast to row 4 here, linsoa. Linsoa means to go a long distance, right? If lalechet is to go a short distance, linsoa is a much longer distance. This oftentimes gets translated as to travel. That's not always the case, right? If you say on a regular basis, I travel for work, in English, right, that could mean by car, but also by plane. Linsoa is simply to go, right? And look at the sentence we have here. Ani nosea liyerushalayim barakevet. Ani nosea, here I've conjugated the verb linsoa. So I go, or I am traveling, liyerushalayim, to Jerusalem, barakevet, on the train. Okay, and here on the left-hand side, I've given you 2 different ways to translate the sentence, which both make sense. They're just slight variations in English, right? I'm traveling to Jerusalem by train, or I'm taking the train to Jerusalem. Either way, it's understood, ani nosea liyerushalayim barakevet. You could also, by the way, in Hebrew is very forgiving in word order. So you could also say, ani nosea barakevet liyerushalayim. Either way is fine, but just know nosea is a long distance, and I've qualified it, just like I did before with lalechet. I've qualified linsoa here with rakevet. Rakevet is the train, is a train. Ha-rakevet is the train. There's only Rakevet Israel, Israel Railways that goes to Jerusalem. There are currently 2 stops in Jerusalem in the center and the south. Either way, it's the same company. Ani nosea liyerushalayim barakevet. I'm going to Jerusalem by train. I'm traveling to Jerusalem by train. I'm taking the train to Jerusalem. All of those are acceptable translations for this sentence. Okay, and linsoa, to go a long distance. So that could be just I'm going somewhere, I'm traveling somewhere. Any of those can be translated with linsoa. Our next verb, linhog. Linhog is to drive. Okay, this is specifically to drive a vehicle. So a car for most people is going to be the verb that you're going to use for to drive, linhog. Nahag, which we get from the same shoresh, right? We talk about this every week because it's very important. Every Hebrew word is comprised of a shoresh or a shoresh. That means a root, R-O-O-T. In this case, the root is nun he gimel. You can see that in that specific order with a few letters before, in the middle of it, and vowel sounds that indicate what it actually means. Excuse me, but nun he gimel is the shoresh that we're using here. And in this form, linhog means to drive. Think to drive a car. Almost immediately, linhog will always come with a car. Okay, so a very common bumper sticker you will see in Israel when it's a company car or a truck or anything that's a commercial vehicle, it'll have on the back, row 7 here, Ech ani noheg or Ech ani noheget, right? There'll usually be a dash between the gimel in the verb linhog and the taf at the end indicating the feminine because it's being inclusive. Remember that in Hebrew, everything is gendered, almost everything. And when we start conjugating, if you want to say, how am I driving? I have to conjugate the verb accordingly. So for me, noheg, for a woman, noheget. So ech, how, ani, I, noheg, am driving. Okay, so ech ani noheg or ech ani noheget, how am I driving? This is a common bumper sticker. You'll see, just like you will in other countries, it'll have a phone number under it. If, God forbid, you're in an accident or the driver cuts you off or does something inappropriate, you can call the number and lodge a complaint. Whether or not that does anything is a different story. But the point is linhog, to drive a car. It could also be to drive a truck, but think vehicle. Think a vehicle that you sit in and that's covered. That is opposed to our next verb here, row 8, lirkov. Lirkov is to ride, R-I-D-E. And this is not to ride a horse. You will sometimes hear it used for a horse, but this is used primarily for bikes and motorcycles and scooters and anything of those kinds, right? So lirkov is to ride. You will every once in a while hear this for horses and other animals that you ride for transportation, but we're talking still vehicles here. So here is a sample sentence that uses a different type of conjugation for the verb. Hear me out on this one. Hashvil miyuad liruchvei ofanayim bilvad. Okay, so any of you who live in a major city in Israel, or even not a major city, but there are bike paths around there, right? And you want to be clear who's allowed on this path or not. Are scooters allowed? Are electric bikes allowed? Are motorcycles allowed? Are pedestrians allowed? Hashvil, shvil is a path or a pathway. Shvil, hashvil, so the pathway. Muad, Muad is a great word to have under your belt. This is a bonus vocab word, so please write this one down. It can mean intended, is dedicated, is any of those words. It comes from the root ya'ad. Ya'ad means a goal or a destination, right? So as shvil miyu'ad, the pathway is designated or intended for rochvei ofanayim. Now, I said before, our verb here is lirkov. And from the infinitive, we get all sorts of words, right? We get past, present, and future. We get the verbal noun, the act of riding. And we also get something we've talked about in the previous lesson is the participle, right? A participle can be a noun, it can be an adjective, it can be a verb. In this case, I'm talking about cyclists or riders of bikes, right? How do I want to say a cyclist in Hebrew? Is rochev ofanaim, the driver or the rider of an ofanaim. Ofanaim is a bicycle. Rochev ofanaim, rochev in this case becomes a participle. So the rider, in this case, a male rider, rochev ofanaim is a bike rider, right? You can simply say bike rider, you can say cyclist. It means the same thing, and you say it the same way in Hebrew. And rochve ofanaim is the plural. This is because it's a compound noun. In Hebrew, we call that smichut. It's a very important function of Hebrew. When you want to get to a more advanced level of Hebrew, you're going to be using smichut, compound nouns, all the time. Think in English, bookstore, coffee house, schoolhouse, dog house, all of those are compound words. We do the same thing in Hebrew with some minor changes in the vowels. So in this case, rochve ofanaim, rochve is rochavim. Rochavim is the plural participle of lirkov. So the people who do riding, right? It's not just to ride a bike, it's the people who are actively riding a bike. Rochve ofanaim, cyclists. Bilvad. Bilvad means only. Okay, so put this all together. This would be a sign that you see at the entrance to a park, perhaps, or a bike lane. Hashvil miuad lerochve ofanaim bilvad. The path or the lane. It's another way to translate shvil. The path is intended for cyclists only. Okay, very good one to know if you are a cyclist, if you have a motorcycle, if you have one of those scooters, any of those motorized two-wheelers. Is primarily a two-wheeler when we use the verb lilkov. Okay, next verb, roten, litayel. Litayel you've probably heard quite a lot. Litayel can mean both to travel and it can mean to hike, right? You've heard of people going on a tiyul. A tiyul can be both a multi-month backpacking through South America after one's service in Tzahal, in the IDF, or it could simply be taking a hike. Not take a hike in the English expression of get lost, but taking a hike like going for a hike, like going for a short hike, a long hike, a strenuous hike, a leisurely hike, doesn't matter. Litayel means to travel. Okay, it has, litayel can be both general travel, like to travel to travel on a plane, to travel a long distance. Litayel is a general term for travel, and it can also, like I said, mean to hike. And here's how it goes. Row 11, sample sentence. בא לך לטייל הסופש? חשבתי על טיול בגולן. Okay, so here I use the verb letayel in its two different meanings, both to travel and to hike. So pay attention, and with some really good everyday Hebrew in it. So for those of you who want to improve your everyday Hebrew, in addition to what we're studying today, this is a great sentence for that. בא לך לטייל הסופש? Question mark. Okay, balecha means would you like, or do you feel like? Bali, we've talked about this before when we talked about slang, is a slang expression in Hebrew that means I feel like, I want, I love, I'd like to. Anything like that is bali. In this case, I'm asking someone else. So if I'm asking a man, it would be balecha. If I was asking a woman, it would be balach. Right? Do you feel like, do you fancy, are you interested in litayel hasofash, in traveling or hiking hasofash? Sofash, as you see those two apostrophes between the second to last and last letters, we know automatically that this is an acronym or an abbreviation. In Hebrew, we talk about this a lot. We love our concise small words. Sofash stands for Sof HaShavua. Sof HaShavua, Sof means end, Shavua, week, end of the week, the weekend, right? Sofash means the weekend, and this is typically what someone who is not observant as a Jew would call Shabbat. Obviously, sofash also includes Friday, right? Because most people have Friday off as a day of from work. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. So sofash is the weekend. So it includes Friday and Saturday. If you were abroad, it would be Saturday and Sunday. Sofash, though, is oftentimes the word used instead of Shabbat for people who are making it clear they're either not celebrating Shabbat or they just want to wish someone a good weekend. Sofash na'im, have a pleasant weekend. In this case, I'm saying, Ba lecha letayel hasofash. Are you interested or do you want to travel or hike this weekend? Okay, because this sofash could be Friday, it could be Saturday. It's not quite clear. Okay. And then the answer is, or the person who's asking the question says, Chashavti al tiul bagolan. I thought about, chashavti, I thought, al, about, tiul, a trip or a hike, bagolan, in the Golan Heights, right? So altogether, balacha letayel hasofash, chashavti al tiul bagolan. Do you feel like traveling or hiking this weekend? I was thinking, or I thought about a hike or a trip to the Golan. Okay, very common sentence. If you are asking to go somewhere with someone or you want to see if someone's interested, here's a great sentence to copy and paste and add in your own individual words. Okay, a few more verbs and then a few more words. Latus. Latus is to fly in a vehicle. Lauf is to fly like a bird. Okay, so anything that flies naturally is lauf. We're still talking about travel, so that's latus, right? Latus is to fly. So an airplane is a matos, again, using the same shoresh to create the word for airplane. A pilot, a male pilot is a tayas, right? So all the same root gives us all these words. Hebrew's very efficient like that, which is great. But the word for aviation in Hebrew comes from that other verb, lauf, just like it does in English, right? Aviation has the word aviate in there. And avia is the Latin for a bird, right? Ave is a bird. So aviation is what we call the whole field of planes and helicopters and all that, even though we're talking about a bird. We're not talking about an actual vehicle. So in Hebrew, aviation is te'ufa, right? It's coming from that other verb for to fly, but it's talking about planes. Just like in English, if you think that's confusing, sorry, not sorry, it's just as confusing in English, right? Aviation has to do with birds, and we use it all the time for airplanes. So lest you get confused, but latus is to fly in a plane. That's typically how we fly. Le'an tiltsu latus, right? Row 13, very simple sentence, certainly has more resonance in the last year and a half when we haven't been so easily able to travel. Le'an tiltsu latus, where do you, plural, want to fly, right? So indicating you need to fly to, you're looking to fly somewhere. Le'an is the question word in Hebrew for to where, right? It's best translated as to where. So any of these verbs that I was using in this list that you wanted to ask a question with, we would use le'an. Le'an ata rotze linsoa? Where do you want to go? Le'an ata rotze letayel? Where do you want to travel or hike? La'an tirtzu latus? Where do you want to fly? Okay. Two more verbs. I didn't create sample sentences for these just because we don't use these as often, but if we're already talking about travel and tourism and movement, we might as well have these under our belt, right? Excuse me. The first one is lashut. Lashut is to float or to row. So for those of you who are canoeists, kayakers, or you like your flotation device in the water, this is the one you want, lashut. And that is different than lahaflig. Lahaflig is to sail, or I wrote here, depart by ship, right? So you'll now see ads again for haflaga, haflagot. Haflagot is sailing, right? That could be on a cruise ship, that could be on a sailboat. Lahaflig is the catch-all verb for that. Okay, a few more words that have to do with travel and tourism, and then I want to get to your questions. And again, if you have questions, please write them in the Q&A section. Okay, we have 3 words in Hebrew that mean vacation. And it's a little complicated. It's not even clear, according to the Academy for the Hebrew Language, which is the standardization for modern Hebrew, the difference between the 3. We have nofesh, chofesh, and chufsha, right? So 2 of them rhyme, and the other 2 have the exact same root. What do we do with these 3 words? First off, know that you can totally mix up the words and everyone will understand you. Let's start with the first one, nofesh. Nofesh means vacation in the sense of relaxation. Think of, for those of you who have a stronger Jewish a traditional educational background behind you, think about the line in when we get to Shabbat, right? Shabbat vayinafash. God rested and was relaxed, or was relieved, or calmed down, right? Nofesh has the understanding of this is what you do on a vacation. You go to relax, you go to vacate, you go to vayinafash. Nefesh also has to do with soul, it has to do with respiration and breathing. So you're able to, right? We all know that sigh of relief. It's not even a sigh, it's a sigh of relief. That that's nofesh, right? When you're able to lie on the beach with a drink in hand, or be on top of a beautiful hill or a mountain, or however you choose to vacation, that's nofesh. It's the point at which you're actually relaxed and you're on vacation in the mental, emotional sense. Then we have our other 2 words, chofesh and chufsha. Both of these have the exact same root of chet, pei, shin. They're used slightly different. Chofesh. Chofesh also means freedom in addition to vacation. And as I wrote here, chofesh is a more abstract term, right? We talk about Bali, like we had that expression before, right? Bali, I want or I feel like chofesh. Bali chofesh. I'm looking for general vacation, right? Or as a very important concept in Israel, ha-chofesh hagadol, the big vacation, aka summer vacation, right? It's this tenuous time in between school and the holidays, but we don't have actual plans yet, right? Vacation in the sense of this is what I'm looking for, or this is what I'm planning towards, but I don't have actual plans yet, is chofesh. And that is different than chufsha. Chufsha is a vacation, but it's a definite vacation, right? I have definite plans. אני נוסע לחופשה בפורטוגל. I am going on a vacation in Portugal, or to Portugal, right? אני נוסע, I'm going, or I can also say I'm traveling. לחופשה, for a vacation, בפורטוגל, in Portugal. Okay, that could be a sentence with that. Chufsha, chofesh, nofesh, understand all these words in their general sense mean vacation, and it's okay if you mess up the meanings with them. Like if you can't, at the top of your, as you're saying something, you mess up chofesh and chufsha, you will be completely understood. Only a few very persnickety people will correct you, and even then they're probably wrong, right? So these 3 words mean vacation. Just know that nofesh is that actual during vacation, whereas chofesh and chufsha are the general framework of a vacation, right? You're planning, you're traveling, you're staying in a hotel or Airbnb, whatever it may be. Okay, those are our words for vacation. Row 20, leisure. Leisure, the word is pnai. I add this word because it's good to have that in our lives. It's also a word that doesn't necessarily come immediate to our minds, perhaps. There's a very popular magazine in Israel called Pnai Plus, plus meaning plus, Pnai meaning leisure, so Leisure Plus. It's a lifestyle magazine. It's about all sorts of things, a style magazine, if you will, right? But Pnai is leisure, or leisure, for those of you who say it as such. Another good word when we're talking about what kind of vacation we're looking for, right? Some people are looking for pnai on their chufsha. Other people are looking for a halpatka or a harpatka. Harpatka is an adventure, right? Anything can be an adventure, right? But halpatka is something that has a little bit more action drama to it. Is a halpatka is a adventure. Good word to have. Okay, this is an important word. You're not going to be able to understand it if you just translate it, right? Heritage trip, tiul shorashim. So we said before, tiul is a trip. It can also be a hike. In this case, we're talking about a trip. Shorashim, right? We talked about the shoresh of a word before. Shoresh is a root. Shorashim are roots. It's just the plural of the word root. So tiul shorashim literally translates as a roots trip or a trip of roots. And if you were to plug this in on your own, it may not come up as what it is, which is a heritage trip, right? If you're going on a tiul shorashim, you're going to where your immediate family is from, or where they were from several generations ago, be that in Eastern Europe or North Africa or in the Middle East or elsewhere in the world, right? Tiul shorashim is what we call the school trips that go to visit Poland. And now because of the Abraham Accords, we'll be going to Morocco as well to visit ancient Jewish communities there. Tiul shorashim is a heritage trip. We usually only use it with regards to Jewish heritage trips, but I mean, anyone can go on a heritage trip, right? But we use this term specifically going on a trip that is also connected with one's Jewish ancestry or Jewish ancestry in general, in Jewish history. Tiul shorashim. Another type of trip that Israelis often like to go on is a tiul me'organ. Me'organ is organized. Actually, this is a cool word. This comes from English. Organized. Me'organ. It's the exact same root. We just Hebraicized the word organized and came up with the infinitive le'argen, to organize. Me'organ, organized. Right? So an organized trip, a tiul me'organ. If you look in newspapers in Israel, you'll often see, as well as travel agents, you'll see ads for tiul me'organ to all sorts of places. It's usually more exotic places, right? Tiul me'organ leGeorgia, a organized trip to Georgia, the country, not the US state. Or tiul me'organ leMarrakesh, a organized trip to Marrakesh. An organized trip in Hebrew, a tiul me'organ in Israel, typically means that it includes the cost of, at the very least, accommodation, sometimes the flight as well, but it's me'organ, meaning that someone has organized it, meaning that there's usually a tour guide guiding you around. So for those of you who like a tour guide, when you go on vacation and in a group, you'll look for a tiul me'organ. You won't necessarily be the only people on that trip though, so keep that in mind. If you don't like a tour guide, you do not want to sign up for a tiul me'organ. Right? A tiul me'organ almost always has a guide along with it. So that's a very important one to keep in mind. If you see that and it looks like a great price or it's very comprehensive, that's what it means. Okay. Polisa. Polisa does not mean police. It sounds like that. That is not the word we have in Hebrew for police. Polisa is an insurance policy, right? Those of you who travel abroad, you should absolutely get health and travel insurance, both during the pandemic and even before that. And when you go to sign up for it, you will be issued a polisa. Now in Israel, you can order travel and health insurance through your own Kupat Cholim, through your own HMO, right? So I have Clalit. Clalit works with Klal Insurance. They issue mine. I can also go through my credit card and go through AIG. There's all sorts of other agencies out there, right? But no matter who I pick, at the end, once I pay for the service and I sign up depending on where I'm going, how many days, what I want added to it, I will be issued a polisa, the policy, right? And the policy will dictate the standard, the contract, right? It includes the contract, what's included, what's not included, what's the deductible, who do I call if something, God forbid, happens. All of that is the polisa, right? And the last one, before I get to your questions, is dmei bitul. This is a very important one in general when we're traveling, but especially during the pandemic. Dmei bitul. Dmei bitul is comprised of two words. Again, a compound word like we've had before. Dmei is best translated as fee, right? fee or money sometimes. We're coming up on the holiday of Chanukah. Dmei Chanukah is one of the ways that we celebrate. Think of like the gelt, golden coins. In Hebrew, modern Hebrew, we call that gelt, Dmei Chanukah. Dmei we also use as a fee, right? So entrance fee is Dmei Knisa. Knisa is the Hebrew word for entrance. So Dmei Knisa, entrance fee. In this case, Dmei Bitul. Bitul is the word for cancellation. So cancellation fee, Dmei Bitul, right? Some places they charge you a cancellation fee if you decide to cancel, and if you cancel within a certain amount of days before your trip, you'll have to pay that. Some places like airlines in the last year have waived Dmei Bitul. They have waived the cancellation fee if you need to change your plans for whatever reason. But that's an important thing when you're booking any sort of tiul, any sort of nisiya, a trip. What are the cancellation fees involved? Great, I'm going to stop here as I see we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A box. Let's start there. Anonymous asks, is the word nahag also used for driving a bus or riding in a bus? Great question. So we had that word to drive, right? Linhog is to drive. A driver is a nahag. A male driver is a nahag. You will hear people, for example, if you're on the bus and the back door of the bus hasn't opened yet at a bus stop that has stopped and someone wants to get off, you'll simply hear people scream nag to get their attention to open the door, right? I always sort of fret about that when I go back to the US because I forget what you say when you want the driver to open the back door when they haven't. It's back door, at least in Washington, where I'm from. But nahag sounds great because it's just so piercing. When you scream it really loud on the bus, you get everyone's attention, right? Nag, we all know how that sounds. But nahag is a driver. It is not a passenger. Passenger, let me put that in here. That's a great question. I'm going to put it up here. Comes from our verb linsoa. No, say ah. Passenger, male. Okay, any kind of passenger. It can be a bus, it can be a plane, it can be a train. Anytime you're going a long distance, you are a passenger. You could also use this in a car, right? The person who's not driving, who's not the nahag, is a nosea or a nosat or nosim or nosot, depending on the gender and how many there are, right? But just know that a passenger in general comes from our verb linsoa. So that's the passenger, the driver is a nahag. But great question. Anonymous, how do you say airport? This is a word you can look up. I'll just tell you now, Anonymous, but again, I'm not a human dictionary. You can look these words up very quickly. We have two ways to say it. Namal Teufa is an airport because the word port in Hebrew is namal. Teufa, like I just said, is aviation. So the port of aviation, namal Teufa. The other way we can say it is ste Teufa. Ste is the word sadeh, which means a field. So an airfield is the other way we say a airport in English, in Hebrew, knowing that back in the days when aviation first started, many times it wasn't a whole port, it wasn't the whole building that we have today. It was often just an airstrip and a few concessions or something like that. Either one, Sde Teufa is usually a smaller airport, like it doesn't have a whole infrastructure, a whole building system behind it. The one that we use the most, especially with Ben Gurion, is a Namal Teufa, right? An airport. Jamie, what does regila mean in comparison to the words you're using for vacation? I don't know what you mean by the word regila, Jamie. Perhaps if you can write it out in Hebrew. Regila in modern Hebrew means regular or normal. Ragil is normal. So not sure what you mean there, but happy to answer your follow-up. Anonymous, is linsoa only for traveling from one city to another, or can it also be used for traveling from one part of Jerusalem to another? Linsoa is to go a long distance. Simple as that. It's a long distance, meaning it's somewhere you cannot reach on your own 2 feet. That it could be, if a city is as big as Jerusalem is, which is quite big in its municipal borders, you can say nosea. But yes, it's used for long distance. Does chofesh also mean a day off? Yes, chofesh is vacation, right? It's vacation in every sense, not just you were planning a vacation to somewhere exotic. It's also a day off of work. It could also be anything of those lines, but it's a day off of work that isn't a sick day. It isn't a furlough like we've known during the pandemic. It's a day off, vacation day. Okay. Thank you, Miri, for pointing out the transliteration. I love having editors on the call with me as well. Dmei bitul, I wrote a different thing for the transliteration. Thank you for that. Dmei bitul, cancellation fee. Jamie asks about Regila with regards to the army. Jamie, as we've talked about before on this call, very great question. Army in Hebrew has its own language, right? And because most of the people on our call are civilians and are not going to have to deal with the army, we're not going to get into army talk here. We have done that before with words like chamshush and pakal, but regila, we're not going to get into all of those things also because that's not the preparation I did for this call, but thank you for asking about that. Army has its own terminology with regards to days off and days on the base and so forth. Great question there. Okay. Let me see if we have any last questions here. I see a lot of people writing in the chat, even though I asked you to write in the Q&A, but I'll get to those as well. Okay. Matthew, this is the case of why you would scream Nahag on the bus in Israel is the same as you would say backdoor in another country, simply because you did press or pull the cord or you pressed the button and they didn't stop or they haven't opened the door yet. Obviously that was implied. I'm sorry if that wasn't understood. Okay, Lorraine asks, please write the word for open the door. You would not say this, right? It's a long line. It's tiftach et hadelet. That's a long way to say it. The way in Israel to get the driver's attention after you've pressed the button to stop and they haven't stopped, or they have yet to open the back door, is simply scream nahag. That is what the vast majority of Israelis do in this country, right? Tiftach et hadelet. You're with all the other people on the bus, as opposed to nahag, 2 syllables, stick with nahag. Okay, any last questions? In the Q&A window, of course. Okay, great. So, toda rabah, thank you all for joining this week. As I said, this lesson will be up in the next few days, up on the on Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube channel, so you'll be able to find it for free, pause it, take screenshots, however you would like, of any of the words that we went over today. And in addition, if you have any suggestions or requests for further classes, please write them. Please be in touch with Nefesh B'Nefesh. We have a calendar through the end of this year of lessons. I believe next week is one of my favorite lessons, and I know one of yours, which is media literacy. How to be able to read the newspaper in Hebrew in Israel, even with an intro level of Hebrew. It's a great class. Highly encourage you all to join. Very important one to go through. And again, if you have any suggestions for topics, please be in touch with us via email. Okay, so with that, thank you all so much. Toda rabah, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Lihitraot.